Oilers are set to take on the Dallas Stars in game number 3 of the Western Conference Finals tonight. Here's everything you need to know.
You are Locked On Oilers, your daily podcast on the Edmonton Oilers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Monday edition of Locked On Oilers. I am your host, Nick Zararis, still powering through. Before we get to today's episode, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Make every moment more right now. New customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. So, very straightforward. We're going to touch a little bit on game 2, some stuff looking ahead towards tonight's game, and just a macro glance at the series. So, we'll start talking about game number 2, which was Saturday night. This is what it's like this time of year. There is not a lot of room. There are not a lot of chances. The further you go in the playoffs, the better the compositions of the team you're going to come up against. Oilers and Stars both seem pretty content to try and win this in a relatively low event style where there's not a lot of chances, there's not a lot of up and down. And instead, it's a little more clunky, it's physical, there's not a lot of room out there. And when you are in a playoff series against a team like Dallas that has depth, and has depth especially on defense where they have 2 really solid pairs that are capable of controlling play, when you've got that on the other end, you've got to be very tactile in how you want to attack. We've seen it now in the Eastern Conference where the Rangers have been outchanced all 3 games of their series against Florida, but the high danger chances are close, and the goaltending of the Rangers has allowed them to take a 2-1 series lead. We'll talk about Stuart Skinner in a minute, his approach going into game 3, but the way the Oilers are playing, they're right there. And I know that's going to be kind of unsatisfying to hear from me saying about a Western Conference final, but this time of year, most of the games are pretty close to a coin flip. You know, they're 50-50, 45-55. They're in that ballpark. It's really hard for me to get wound up, to get mad about a game that was 1-1 for a majority of the game, like game number 2, or 1-0 until it was only 1-0 for about a minute and a half. But shout out Connor Brown, by the way, who's looking better the longer these playoffs have gone on. But the Oilers are in these games. It would be one thing if they weren't playing well. It would be one thing if they'd gotten smoked or Dallas was really dominating. Edmonton has been right there for both of these games so far. They took one on the road already, winning game number 1 in double overtime. Great. You negated the value of home ice by winning one of those games on the road. I've been breaking it down, gaming it out a little further. Game 3 is tonight. We're going to play a game 3, a game 4, a game 5. We might play a game 6. We might play a game 7. So that means we have a game 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 5 games remaining, including game 3 tonight. Of those 5 games, the Oilers need to win 3 out of 5. Winning 3 out of 5 games is doable. The Oilers were a very good regular season team this year. They don't need to win 3 in a row. It would be nice if they won 3 in a row. They don't need to win 3 in a row. They need to keep doing what they're doing. A little more offense. And we'll talk about the lack of power play calls and the officiating in general, because I think that's more of a macro thing than just specific to game 2. But the Oilers are doing enough. Bouchard, Leon, Connor, Hyman, even Evander Kane showing signs of life. Connor Brown showing signs of life. Janmark, I've liked his game the last couple nights as well. The Oilers are right there. They have the talent, and they are playing reasonably well. Their goaltending has not sank them like it did last round or in the one game they lost in game number 1. But we need a little more. It is very clearly the Oilers need just a smidge more. And there are a few ways to go about doing that, whether it's trying to break down the other team's defense and play a little bit more of a structured high to low cycle game, looking for point shots and deflections, whether that's trying to find ways to spring your forwards into transition faster, to create the rush opportunities you like so much. It's tricky. The problem is, and this is true of pretty much everybody, when we're looking at it from the Oilers' perspective, we're not thinking about it from the Dallas perspective, because as these series move along, as they progress, as they develop, the teams are making moves back and forth, decision-making wise. Like most teams, and I've said this before, but I'll explain this again. Most hockey teams are not changing systems. They are not changing rules within their systems during the course of a playoff series. They're just not. A coach is more inclined to say, play our way better or harder than they are to change anything, because the rules within hockey systems are very complex. You got to understand that's the entire point of having structure and having scheme in any sport, is so that way everybody has assignments and rules. Within those assignments, you have given rules where if the puck goes here, I do this. If the puck goes there, I do that. If my guy who I'm marking goes here, I do this. That's the point of having rules in a structured system, to give guys something to fall back on if they mess up. You know, your system is there to be the foundation of your decision making. That if I have the puck on my stick and I am on this part of the ice, I should have a teammate in this spot ready to receive my pass. That's what you're looking for. And that's the whole point of having structure and scheme, is to have something to fall back on. And teams are not going to change that in season, especially not in a playoff series. And that's why you will on occasion see a team get boat raced in the playoffs, because instead of changing what isn't working, their coach is just harder, faster, stronger of something that isn't working. And yes, there are scheme inefficiencies where certain styles of play don't match up well with each other. I talked about this in the Kings-Oilers series, that the Oilers are very fast in transition. The Kings are a little bit slower. They're more methodical. They want to be a little bit more passive defensively. And that was a mismatch for the Kings. The Oilers were able to use their speed to get the transition. They were able to create off of the rush. And that's something that's jumped out to me through 2 games against Dallas. The room for those rush opportunities is not there. And historically, that's always been the knock of being a team that tries to create off the rush, is it's hard to create sustained offense when you gain the zone with speed. You take your scoring chance almost immediately upon entry of the zone. And then you most likely lose possession, because if you get a shot on goal, the goalie saves it and we go to a faceoff. You miss the net, the defense recovers. The goalie makes a save, puck's still in play. Most often, the defense recovers. If you're shooting off the rush, generally, you're not going to be able to crash the net as much as you would like to. The defender's job in that situation is to force the shooter or the puck holder. He may not necessarily be a shooter, but your goal as a defender there is to force that player to making a decision before they want to. The Stars are very good defensively, and their forwards contribute a lot to that as well. But talent-wise, it's as good a defense as there is in the entire league. Chris Tanev has done a really good job in this series so far, and the Oilers don't have a ton of room. And frankly, I'll give the Oilers credit too. They've played really good defense in this series so far. There has not been a whole lot of action in front of Stuart Skinner, and I think that's largely why Stuart Skinner has played well. But coming up next, we are going to dive into some of the officiating minutia of the NHL playoffs, so stick around. It is winner take all time over in the National Basketball Association, where Luka Doncic and the Mavericks are cooking. The Celtics are poised to go back to the NBA Finals. Here, over in the National, Stars Oilers tonight, Rangers Panthers tomorrow. It's winning time in the postseason. And FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more if you were interested. FanDuel has Oilers, Stars listed series price, both teams -110, totally even. The Oilers winning on the road, negating the value of home ice. The Oilers started out as slight underdogs, +105 before the series. So if you want to get in on the action, visit fanduel.com and /locked-on and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for making Locked On Oilers a part of your Monday to the everydayers who are listening every single day. Thank you for making this playoff experience so much fun and making this show what it is. So give yourself a little pat on the back. Down here in the States, it's a Memorial Day, so not a work day for most people. Speaking of work, trying to rebuild the confidence of a goalie is really difficult, and I'll talk about that more in the third segment, but the way Stuart Skinner has handled himself since getting benched in the last round for Calvin Pickard, something to commend. Not a lot of guys have the makeup to be able to do that, but we'll talk about that more coming up next as we look to preview game number 3 itself. So, I hate the NHL. As a governing body, the NHL is god-awful. And most fans, I shouldn't say most, there is an entire segment of the NHL fan base that is convinced the officials and the league are out to get their favorite team. Now, I do not believe there is a vast conspiracy. I do not believe the NHL is scripted. I do not believe the league plays favorites. I do not believe there is anything nefarious going on here. I genuinely think these officials are not doing their job because they are misunderstanding what their job is. You saw a really good example of this in the Florida game, the Rangers Florida game on Sunday, where the first 3 penalties all got called on the Rangers because the Rangers had a lead in the game, and the NHL, even though Florida was grabbing and holding and interfering, they couldn't call another penalty on Florida to give the Rangers a chance to make it a 3-1 game. No, they had to manage the game. And this is my big pet peeve with hockey officials. They are trying to do things that aren't in their job description. The way sports are supposed to be played is within the confines of the rule book, not someone's interpretation of the rule book. Now, this isn't a slight against the Stars. This isn't a slight against the Oilers. This is a slight against the National Hockey League Competition Committee and their officials. Every time you allow an official to say to himself, well, I can't call a penalty on this because the score of the game is Y, that is a dereliction of responsibility. Your job is to call the rule book as it is written. It is not, the Oilers are up in this game, I can't call a power play. Or the Oilers have such a good power play, if we give them this opportunity, they're going to score, and that's going to change the outcome of the game. I need honest consistency. It's not just the officiating. You know, we can do an entire episode just talking about how the Department of Player Safety doesn't actually do a whole lot of player safetying. There are violent, dangerous hits all of the time that don't even get a fine, let alone a suspension. But the stakeholders at hand, meaning the owners, Gary, Bill Daly, Colin Campbell, the big boys, they like it like this. They want the officials to call the games like this. And sometimes, and I'll be fair, sometimes there are situations where you need the officials to manage the game, where if there's been a couple questionable hits, the temperatures are rising, there's scrums after whistles, then I think it's okay as a referee to kind of be a little overeager to call penalties, because that's about safety. When we are just allowing grabbing, when we are allowing interferences, when we are not equal in our application of goaltender interference, that's when I believe the officials are not doing a good enough job, and that's changing the outcome of games. The Oilers should not be penalized abstractly, philosophically, for having a great power play. The argument for not calling penalties on the Stars cannot be, oh, well, if it's a 1-1 game and we give them a power play late, that might end the game. It's a penalty or it isn't a penalty. Those are the two choices. It is a penalty. It is not a penalty. I need honesty and I need some accountability. I'm very glad to see Wes McCauley did not make one of the conference final crews. I think he is horrendous. I consistently find him calling things purely to manage the game as opposed to calling the game. And those are very different things. The Oilers are going to get their looks. I believe the Oilers are going to get some looks, and I do think they're going to break through. I know the power play hasn't been able to get a lot going as of late. I know McDavid, not 100%. At least that's the supposition everybody's working off of, because he's not moving right. He's not engaging as much. He's a little bit shy to go to the middle of the ice every now and then when you would normally see him try and bull his way through or deke his way through. He's been pulling up. He's been looking for reinforcements, and it's fine. I mean, he scored the overtime game winner in game number 1. He's second in points in the entire playoffs behind Draisaitl. He's doing a really solid job. But if the Oilers are going to win this series and pull off this upset, they're going to need the officials to call the game as intended, not as they see it. When the officials take on that, I need to manage the game, they are not allowing the players to determine the outcome of the game. If it's a penalty, it's a penalty. It doesn't matter if the Stars are up 3-0. If the Oilers take a penalty, you should call it. If the Oilers are up 3-0 and the Stars take a penalty, you should call it. Equal application under the law. Let's be fair here. And I'm going to say this, and this is going to sound a little off-putting if you're not an Oilers fan and you're listening out of curiosity. I don't care that the Oilers' power play is great, and you don't want to let that decide the game, that you want the game decided at 5-on-5. The Oilers should not be penalized abstractly for being good at something. I think that's entirely antithetical to sport. That is the polar opposite of what sports are supposed to be about. You are supposed to take advantage of your matchups. You are supposed to target weaknesses. You are supposed to take advantage where you can. As soon as we start getting into the Oilers' power play is too good. We cannot allow that to decide the game. Why not? Is power play not a part of the game? Did I miss a memo here where if goaltending or special teams are the best parts of your team, you're not as good as everyone else? I feel like I missed the boat here at some point on hockey discourse, because it feels like we have these same conversations every year where the team with the great goalie, they're not that good. Is the goalie on the team? Or, they're power play merchants. Is the power play a part of the team? I was under the assumption that if it happened during a game, they were part of the team, they were part of the game. Would you like to be a great 5-on-5 team that doesn't need to ask their goalie to do a lot and can get by with average special teams? Yes, in an ideal world, that's fine. But, and I'll wrap up on this thought, one of the drawbacks of being a 5-on-5 team like the Hurricanes or the Leafs per se, that typically means your high-end guys, and this feels opposite of what I've said about the Leafs, about how I feel about their core. That's where your stars need to take over the game. Your special teams, your power play, your penalty kill, that is where you and your best players need to make things happen, because that's when they're going to have the greatest opportunity to exercise influence over the outcome of the game. There are fewer players on the ice. They're able to make more decisions. They have more room. And that's the key here. This time of year, you need a little bit of everything. You need some special teams. You need some 5-on-5. You need some goaltending. And then you need a little luck. It's all accumulated. But coming up next on Locked On Oilers, we're going to talk about some of the things the Oilers can do tonight in game number 3 to go up 2-1. So stick around. Thank you to everybody who is listening, whether it is mid-afternoon for you, if you're listening to this right before the game, on the way to the game. Thank you for listening. Appreciate it. Okay. Abstractly, in the big picture, the Oilers have played fine in this series. It is 1-1 after 2. The Oilers won a road game. They started the series off winning game number 1. Stuart Skinner has looked solid. He was pretty good in game number 1. He was solid in game number 2. Would you like him to have that first goal? Probably. I won't ding him for the Marchment one because that's a redirect, and frankly, Desharnais got to do a better job. The Oilers had like 2 or 3 chances to clear that puck on the eventual Marchment goal that decided the game, and they just couldn't get it out, and it stinks, but that's hockey. When you make mistakes, the other team is going to capitalize. No matter what the situation is, if they're going to find a way, they're going to find a way. So, talking about game number 3 at home. Assuming you're going to be able to play close to what you've done through the first 2 games, I think your big priority has got to be to find a way to get McDavid going at 5-on-5. We understand he might be injured. He's almost certainly injured, but for the benefit of accountability and transparent honesty and all of the ethics of doing content, we're going to assume he's hurt, but we don't know he's hurt. We got to find a way to get him going. It's that simple. And he is having an impact on this game. Whenever he gets the puck in transition and he gets his little stride going, starts chopping his feet, he's moving. He still skates really fast. He hasn't been able to dip and dive maybe as much as you would typically expect, especially on the power play, which has struggled. You know, when the Oilers haven't scored on the power play, it has been an issue for them in the postseason. So that's where they get the power play merchant accusations from, which, again, power play is part of the team. Yes, Connor, Leon, Zach Hyman, Nuge, Bouchard, very good players. The points don't count any less because they come on the power play. Sure, you could say it's more valuable to be good at 5-on-5 than it is to have an elite power play. But you do need them. You do need special teams to contribute. The Oilers' penalty kill? The Oilers' penalty kill has been outstanding in these playoffs. High intensity, forcing turnovers, forcing decisions to happen faster than you want them to. Everything you would want from your penalty kill, the Oilers are getting. So, what's the key to the Oilers winning? First, can report. Well, not report. I can reiterate a report. Ryan McLeod is coming out. Adam Henrique is drawing back in. I think Adam Henrique is going to probably play with McDavid. We will see how guys get rolled out. We will see if maybe we go Connor Leon at points tonight to try and get Connor going, just to see. And with last change, the Oilers have that benefit of maybe trying to load up in certain situations, depending on what defensive pair, what forward group for the Stars is on the ice. That's your first key. Your biggest key, you got to get McDavid going at 5-on-5. And the counting stats are there. The underlying numbers are there. When he is on the ice with Evan Bouchard, they are dominating. They have something like 60% of the goals, 58% of the expected goals. They are doing everything they can to create offense. They need the puck to go in the net. And in the span of a week, weird things can happen. That's the inherent frustration and chaotic underbelly that is playoff hockey. You don't need to outplay your opponent. You just need to get by. The Oilers got by in their last round against the Canucks. The Canucks did not play great in Game 6 or Game 7, but the Oilers found a way. And like we said last week, it's not a favor unless you complete your half of it. When you do your one thing, to get something done, to get a favor done, there needs to be an agreement on both sides, and someone needs to take someone up on something. Yes, the Canucks did the Oilers favors, but the Oilers took advantage. In this series, Dallas is better. They are making fewer mistakes, and this game is likely going to be decided on the margins. Like, yeah, I'm happy Adam Henrique is coming back in. I don't think the difference between him and Ryan McLeod is the difference between the Oilers winning this series and the Oilers losing this series. I think you always want to dress your best possible lineup. I think there's an argument maybe McLeod should be in over someone else in the bottom 6. Who that would be, I don't know. I don't have a strong lean. I feel like Connor Brown, I mentioned in the first segment, I feel like he's been a little bit more noticeable as these playoffs have gone along. Maybe it's a comfort thing. Maybe it's just matchups playing out in his favor, but the Oilers need to get their big boys going. Leon, first game of the postseason, well, game 2, he did not have a point. I cannot realistically say it's feasible to expect Leon to score a goal or have an assist every single game. It's possible. Don't get me wrong. It is wholly possible Leon rattles off 27 points in 24 playoff games and the Oilers win the Stanley Cup. Wholly possible. Entirely possible. But It is difficult. And that's really the key. There are certain ways you can play that are more difficult to win. If you are overly reliant on goaltending or your special teams, you have less of a margin for error because those things take up less of the game than 5-on-5 play. If Stuart Skinner lays an egg, the Oilers have a harder time making up for that because they need a certain baseline level of goaltending to cover up their defensive deficiencies. All this is trade-offs, one way or another, of if we can get this going, what is that at the expense of? And then if we get that going, how is Dallas going to respond to that? So there's a lot to take in here. We've only played 2 games. They've both been very close. One went to double overtime. One was 1-1 for the vast majority of the game. I imagine this is going to continue to resemble a bit of a defensive struggle, and it's going to be hard for offense to happen. I think that benefits the Oilers because it's probably going to ask Stuart Skinner to do less. But I also think it's a drawback for the Oilers because the Stars aren't going to break down and there aren't going to be as many rush opportunities to score, which Edmonton is really good at generating. And frankly, Edmonton's best players are good at generating. If they can get them going in transition, that type of play benefits the Oilers. But it also hurts the Oilers because they're not as good defensively. It's a trade-off. What do you prefer? Would you rather try and concede some defense to be better on offense? Or would you rather be white-knuckle 1-1 and hope your star players can make up a difference somewhere along the line? It's complicated. These are the types of decisions and the factors that coaches and players have to make to what they think is going to work for them to get them wins. But that will just about do it for today's edition of Locked On Oilers. Make sure you are subscribed wherever you get your podcast. Please leave the show a 5-star review. If you are watching over on YouTube, hit the alarm bell, hit the subscribe button, get a notification whenever new content goes live. I will talk to you guys right after game number 3 tonight. Till then, let's go Oilers!